In a story that has ignited outrage, confusion, and fierce debate across South Africa and beyond, President Cyril Ramaphosa finds himself under fire after reports surfaced alleging he failed to provide support, or even acknowledgement, to a group of White Afrikaner expatriates stranded in the United States. The incident, described by critics as a gross dereliction of presidential duty, has triggered an avalanche of reactions from civil rights organizations, opposition parties, and South Africans across the political spectrum. According to multiple testimonies emerging from Afrikaner community groups in Texas and Georgia, a group of white South African nationals, some of whom had emigrated to the US decades ago in search of safety and opportunity, recently appealed to the South African government for assistance amid a series of immigration crises and socio-economic threats. These individuals, many of whom are dual citizens or permanent residents, claim to have been caught in a bureaucratic nightmare following changes in U.S. immigration laws and employment restrictions that have left some stateless, jobless, and in legal limbo. The group reportedly made formal and informal appeals to the South African consulate and, eventually, to the office of the presidency, hoping that the government would intervene with diplomatic or humanitarian support. However, what they received instead was silence. No statement. No delegation. No outreach. Just cold indifference. Critics have accused President Ramaphosa of turning his back on South Africans in distress simply because of their race and political history. Some argue that the lack of assistance reflects a broader bias in foreign policy and humanitarian outreach under the ANC-led administration, one that prioritizes optics over the rights of all its citizens. It is deeply disturbing that the president could ignore the cries of South Africans overseas purely because they do not fit his political narrative. Whether black, white, colored, or Indian, South African lives matter, and it is his duty to protect them. Civil society echoed similar sentiments. AfriForum, the civil rights group known for advocating on behalf of Afrikaners, issued a scathing press release. The abandonment of our people in the USA is not just a betrayal, it is proof that this government selectively chooses who is worthy of help. President Ramaphosa must explain why these citizens were ignored in their hour of need. A government must always be measured by how it treats its most vulnerable citizens, especially those forgotten or unseen. The rift this controversy has caused touches a deep nerve in South Africa's complex racial history. Some black South Africans viewed the story with skepticism, questioning whether the Afrikaner diaspora ever cared about the new South Africa or only called for help now when it suited them. But many others, regardless of race or political belief, agreed on one thing: no South African should be abandoned in times of crisis. As the backlash intensified, the ANC's communication team attempted to downplay the story. Party spokesperson Malenji Bengumatsiri claimed that the presidency had no formal obligation in the matter since the individuals were voluntary immigrants with no active legal residence in South Africa. Legal experts pointed out that even if the individuals were no longer tax residents or domiciled in South Africa, their heritage and nationality still made them eligible for consular assistance, especially under humanitarian grounds. Moreover, the fact that many held South African passports rendered the government's silence legally questionable, if not outright unconstitutional. International observers have also taken note. Several American politicians from conservative states, particularly Texas and Florida, have expressed concern over the treatment of South African expatriates. A few even hinted at the possibility of congressional hearings if more stories of abandonment emerged. Meanwhile, South Africa's diplomatic credibility appears to be suffering. Political analysts say that failing to protect or engage with citizens abroad, regardless of race, is a major stain on a country that already struggles with perceptions of internal division and uneven leadership. As calls for clarity, accountability, and an official response grow louder, Ramaphosa's presidency faces yet another public test. Will he address the nation? Will the government reach out to those affected and offer retroactive assistance? Or will this become yet another chapter in the story of a presidency accused of selective leadership and hollow promises?